The letter trembled in my hands, its edges worn from years of being hidden. I found it while clearing out Grandmother Goldie's attic, a simple white envelope addressed to my father in my mother's precise handwriting. Dated 6 years ago, the very day he left us. Sarah, honey, did you find those old tax records? Mom called from downstairs. I hesitated, my thumb already working under the seal. Still looking. The paper inside was crisp despite its age, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Dear Gideon, if you truly love our daughters, you'll leave tonight. No explanations, no goodbyes. The evidence I have will destroy not just you, but any chance of Sarah and Elodie having a normal life. Don't test me on this. Lena. The attic suddenly felt airless. Below, I could hear Mom laughing with Thorn, her new husband of 8 months. The sound scraped against my memories of Dad, his morning whistling, the way he'd carry Elodie on his shoulders. How he taught me to balance the shop's books every Sunday. Found anything interesting up there? Thorn's voice drifted up, closer now. His footsteps creaked on the stairs. I folded the letter with shaking hands and slipped it into my back pocket. Just dust and spiders, I called back, forcing lightness into my voice. Those records must be in another box. The attic door opened, and Thorn's had appeared. His smile was warm, concerned. You've been up here for hours, kiddo. Your mom's worried you're avoiding the engagement party preparations. I grabbed a random box, needing something to do with my hands. Sorry, got caught up in old photos. The lie tasted bitter. Well, come down soon. Your sister's been asking for you. He disappeared, leaving me alone with the weight of what I'd discovered. 6 years of believing Dad abandoned us. 6 years of Mom's careful explanations about his midlife crisis. 6 years of Elodie growing up without him. And now this letter, threatening him with some unnamed evidence. I pressed my hand against my pocket, feeling the edge of the paper. Whatever truth Mom had buried, whatever she'd used to drive Dad away, I would find it. And then everyone would know exactly what kind of person Lena Hawthorne really was. The engagement party buzzed around me like an angry hive, but I couldn't stop watching Mom and Thorn. They stood by the garden fountain, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they greeted guests. 6 months ago, he'd been just another business consultant. Now he was about to become my stepfather.
So?
Elodie tugged at my dress, her face sticky with cake frosting. Can we go find the cats in the garden? I wiped her mouth with a napkin, grateful for the distraction. Not right now, Elle. Maybe later. But you promised. Her bottom lip trembled. You never play with me anymore. Before I could respond, Thorn's voice cut through the moment. There's my favorite little princess. He swept Elodie up, and she giggled despite herself. Your mother needs you in the kitchen, Sarah. Something about the catering. I found Mom arranging appetizers, her movements sharp and precise. The salmon's late, she said without looking up. Call them and sort it out. I found something in the attic today. I kept my voice steady, watching her hands. A letter. The platter she was holding clattered slightly. We need to focus on the party right now, Sarah. Whatever it is can wait. Like Dad waited? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mom's shoulders stiffened. That's ancient history. We're happy now. Thorn has been good for this family, for the business. Is that what you told Dad? That leaving would be good for the family? She turned, her face pale. You don't understand what was happening back then. Your father made you write that letter? I pulled it from my pocket, unfolding it carefully. The one threatening him? The kitchen door swung open. Grandmother Goldie stood there, her eyes sharp despite her gentle smile. Lena, dear, your guests are asking for you. Sarah can handle things in here. Mom hesitated, looking between us before hurrying out. Goldie watched her go, then turned to me. So you found it. It wasn't a question. There's more you need to know, but not here. Not now. Through the window, I could see Thorn spinning Elodie in the garden, Mom watching them with a brittle smile. The letter felt heavy in my pocket, like a stone weighing down the truth. When? I asked. Tomorrow. Come to the shop early. Goldie squeezed my arm. And Sarah? Be careful who you trust with what you know. I arrived at the shop before dawn, finding Grandmother Goldie already at her desk, surrounded by old ledgers. She didn't look up when I entered, just pushed a manila folder across the desk. 3 years ago, Thorne Mercer worked for the Blackwood family, she said, her voice tight. Their business went bankrupt 6 months after he became their financial advisor. The daughter committed suicide. My hand shook as I opened the folder. Newspaper clippings, bank statements, and a photograph of a young woman with haunting eyes stared back at me. Does Mom know? Your mother sees what she wants to see. Goldie's fingers drummed against her desk. But there's more. Check the third page. The door chimed. Thorne stood in the doorway, his usual smile gone. Having a private meeting without me? Family business, I said, closing the folder. I am family now, Sarah. He stepped closer, reaching for the folder. Or will be, very soon. What's this about the Blackwoods? Goldie stood slowly. How did you know we were discussing the Blackwoods, Thorne? His smile returned, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Lucky guess. You've been digging into my past, haven't you? Just getting to know my future son-in-law, Goldie replied smoothly. The tension crackled between them. I clutched the folder tighter, remembering the young woman's eyes in the photograph. Give me the folder, Sarah. Thorne's voice was soft, dangerous. There are things you don't understand. Like what happened to Sarah Blackwood? The name made him flinch. Or the missing money? Your mother won't believe you. He stepped closer. She trusts me, and Elodie adores me. Think carefully about what you're doing. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Where are you? Elodie's asking for you. Thorne glanced at my phone and smiled. Family should stick together, don't you think? Now, about that folder. You're right, I said, meeting his gaze. Family should stick together. That's exactly why I've already made copies. His mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that made my blood run cold. Behind him, Goldie reached for the phone, and I knew we'd just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Mom's voice crackled through my phone. We're moving to Boston next month. Thorne's firm is expanding, and it's best for everyone. She paused. Elodie needs stability, Sarah. You understand that, right? I gripped the kitchen counter in Goldie's house, where I'd been staying since the confrontation at the shop. And the business? Our family's legacy. Thorne will manage it remotely. He has experience with, like he had experience with the Blackwoods? Silence stretched between us. Then, he explained all that. It wasn't his fault. You're letting Goldie poison you against him. Through the window, I watched Goldie in her garden, tending to the roses Dad had planted years ago. She looked up and waved, her smile fading when she saw my expression. You can come with us, Mom continued. Start fresh. Thorne says. Stop telling me what Thorne says. The words burst out. When did you stop thinking for yourself? The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Elodie clutching her stuffed rabbit, Thorne's hand on her shoulder. Your sister misses you, Mom said softly. We're at the door. I opened it, and Elodie launched herself into my arms. Over her head, Thorne smiled that practice smile. Surprise family visit. Hope we're not interrupting. Actually, I started, but Elodie pulled away, her face serious. Are you coming to Boston too? Thorne says you might not want to. Thorne's smile didn't waver. Children are so perceptive, aren't they? Speaking of perception. He pulled out a familiar manila folder. I found this in your old room. Fascinating reading. My blood ran cold. The copy I'd hidden, he'd found it. Where's the other one? His voice was gentle, meant for Elodie's ears. There isn't another one. The lie came easily. He nodded, eyes flickering to Goldie's approaching figure. Shame about the garden. Those roses look like they're dying. The threat hung in the air like poison. I hugged Elodie tighter, feeling her small heart beating against mine. When do you leave for Boston? 2 weeks, he said. Just enough time to wrap up loose ends. Behind him, the roses swayed in the breeze, their petals beginning to brown at the edges. Goldie's hands shook as she signed the papers, transferring ownership of Hawthorne and Sons to me. The lawyer watched silently, while outside, storm clouds gathered over the shop's weathered sign. It's not just the business, Goldie said, sliding a key across the desk. The safe in my office. Everything you need to know about Thorne is in there. including what really happened to your father. Thunder rumbled as I turned the key in the lock. Inside, beneath decades of financial records, lay a thick red envelope. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom about Boston, but I ignored it. The first document made my heart stop. Bank transfers from our business to offshore accounts, all authorized by Thorne. Then photographs. Dad confronting Thorne outside the shop 6 years ago, Thorne meeting with Sarah Blackwood's father, and finally, a newspaper clipping about Dad's supposed embezzlement scandal. He's been planning this for years, Goldie said from the doorway. Your mother was just his way in. My phone rang, Elodie's ringtone. I answered to her tears. Sarah, something's wrong with the roses. They're all dead, and Thorne says we can't wait 2 weeks anymore. We're leaving tomorrow. The line went dead. Through the window, I watched the storm approach, remembering Thorne's threat about loose ends. He knows we have proof, I said, turning to Goldie. He's running. Not just running. She pointed to the final document, a transfer request for all remaining business assets to a Boston account, scheduled for midnight. Mom's signature was already there, waiting for mine as co-owner. My phone lit up with a text from Thorne. Sign the transfer, Sarah. Families should stick together, remember? Lightning flashed, illuminating the shop where Dad had taught me everything about business and trust. Where he'd faced Thorne alone 6 years ago, choosing exile over exposure. I can't let them take Elodie, I said, grabbing my keys. Goldie caught my arm. You can't face him alone. That's what he wants. I'm not alone. I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd memorized from the safe's documents. Dad, it's time to come home. The storm raged as I pulled up to our house, Dad's truck already parked in the shadows. Through sheets of rain, I saw Thorne loading suitcases into his car, while Mom hurried Elodie between raindrops. Just wait in the truck, I told Dad, but he shook his head. 6 years is long enough. We stepped into the rain together. Thorne saw us first, his smile faltering for just a moment before returning, broader than ever.
Gideon.
What a surprise. Daddy. Elodie broke free from Mom, who stood frozen, her face draining of color. Don't, Thorne warned, stepping between them. Think about what you're doing, Sarah. The transfer's ready. Just sign it, and we all walk away happy. I pulled out the red envelope. Like Sarah Blackwood walked away? Or her father? Gideon? Mom's voice cracked. What are they talking about? Show her, Dad said quietly. Show her what he really is. Lightning flashed as I held out the documents, but Thorne moved faster than I expected. His hand caught my wrist, twisting until the envelope fell into a puddle. Always so righteous, Gideon. But you forgot to tell them the best part. He pulled another paper from his jacket. Old, watermarked, familiar. Your father's signature, authorizing those offshore transfers 6 years ago. He wasn't just a witness to my crimes. He was my partner. That's not true, I said, but Dad's face had gone pale. I had to protect the business, he whispered. He threatened to take everything if I didn't help him. And now history repeats itself. Thorne's grip tightened. Sign the transfer, Sarah. Or I'll make sure everyone knows how your father really helped me destroy the Blackwoods. Mom grabbed Elodie, pulling her close. All this time, both of you. I did it for us, Dad pleaded. Rain soaked the documents in my hands, ink bleeding like tears. Everything I thought I knew about right and wrong, about protecting family, about justice, it all washed away in the storm. Thorne held out a pen. Time to choose, Sarah. Your father's freedom, or your family's legacy. You can't save both. Behind him, Elodie watched with those two wise eyes, and I realized there was no right choice left. Only survival. I took the pen, feeling its weight like a gun in my hand. Behind me, Dad made a strangled sound of protest, but Mom's silence cut deeper. The transfer document trembled in the rain. That's it, Thorne smiled. Just like your father, practical when it counts. But as I leaned forward to sign, Elodie's voice pierced the storm. The roses weren't dead. Thorne's grip loosened slightly. What? I checked after you left. Elodie pulled away from Mom. You just pulled them up. I saw the roots. Something clicked in my mind. The timing, the threats, the rushed departure. I looked at Thorne's car, really looked at it. The trunk wasn't filled with suitcases. Those were file boxes. You never planned to take them to Boston, I said. You just needed us distracted while you cleaned out the accounts. His smile vanished. Sign it. Now. Or what? You'll reveal Dad's involvement. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Check your phone, Thorne. While we've been standing here in the rain, Grandmother's been sending everything, all of it, to the SEC. The color drained from his face as he grabbed his phone. In that moment of distraction, Mom moved. She yanked Elodie back, putting distance between them and Thorne. You're lying, he snarled, but his hands were shaking. Sarah Blackwood's father didn't kill himself, did he? The truth crystallized as I spoke it. He found proof, just like Dad did. But Dad chose exile. Mr. Blackwood chose confrontation. Thorne lunged for his car, but Dad was faster. Years of regret powered his punch, sending Thorne sprawling into the mud. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah, Mom whispered, I'm so sorry. I never knew. Later, I said, watching Thorne struggle to his feet. Right now, we need to. But Thorne was laughing, a broken sound that cut through the rain. You think this is over? Ask your grandmother about December 15th, 1985. Ask her who really started all of this. The sirens grew closer as I stared at him, seeing not a monster but a puppet. Who are you working for? His smile was all blood and victory. Families should stick together, remember? Some families more than others. The police cars rounded the corner, and I realized this wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. 3 days after Thorne's arrest, I found Grandmother Goldie in her garden, replanting roses in the rain-softened earth. Her hands were steady, but her eyes carried shadows I'd never noticed before. December 15th, 1985, I said, sitting beside her in the mud. What happened? She continued planting, her voice distant. Your grandfather didn't die in a car accident. He found something, proof of corruption in the highest levels of the business community. The same people Thorne worked for. Why didn't you tell us? To protect you. She patted the soil around a fresh rose. But I was wrong. Secrets don't protect people. They just delay the inevitable. Mom appeared at the garden gate, Elodie's hand in hers. They'd been staying with Dad at his apartment, trying to rebuild what Thorne had broken. The detective called, Mom said. Thorne's talking. Names, dates, everything. And Dad? I asked. Immunity, in exchange for testimony. She knelt beside us, getting mud on her designer pants without hesitation. I'm so sorry, both of you. I should have seen. We all should have seen something, Goldie interrupted gently. The question is, what do we see now? Elodie picked up a rose, careful of the thorns. Can we plant it together? So we did, all of us, digging in the dirt, creating something new from the destruction. Dad joined us later, his presence still awkward but necessary, like a healing bone that aches but grows stronger. As the sun set, I found a sealed envelope in the fresh soil. Inside was a single photograph, Grandfather, standing proud in front of the shop, next to a man who looked eerily like Thorne. Some battles passed down through generations, Goldie said, watching me study the photo. The question isn't whether we fight them, but how we choose to fight. I looked at my family, broken, healing, but together, and understood finally that revenge wasn't about destroying enemies. Sometimes it was about refusing to let them destroy you. So what now? Mom asked, washing dirt from her hands. I pocketed the photograph, feeling its weight like a promise. Now we rebuild. But this time, no secrets. The roses swayed in the evening breeze, their roots growing deeper with every passing moment.